Seraphine, we all know. Ryan, Westa, most of us know. Yeah, we're here at West Bottoms Whiskey Co. We're about to explore this whole place, this new whiskey place. We got Alex, the owner of it. He made us a couple great old fashions, the best old fashioned in Kansas City. We're about to find that out real quick. But you guys should check this place out if you're ever, I don't know, in the hankering for some good whiskey and you want to get lit.
Stay tuned afterwards because we are going to review what we think of what is supposedly the best old fashioned in Kansas City. Cheers.
Let's salute.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh wait, hold on. Let me top it off real quick. Hold on.
Dun, da, da, da.
It's kind of a never-ending glass.
I love whiskey. All right, here we go.
I'm glad you like whiskey.
I do. I love it.
That makes everything so much easier. Yeah.
I know.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, Alex, Lindsey, this
Yes.
is your place.
Yeah.
You've been here since January, right?
A little bit before that. It took a while to get it open, but we've been open since January, and it's been really crazy and really exciting all at the same time since then. So. Yeah.
Wow. So, what brought you into the world of whiskey making?
I mean, honestly, like years and years ago, I was homebrewing. Then I started distilling around 10 years ago, just because my homebrew sucked, and I needed to try something different. I needed to do something different with my hands. So I bought a still. I bought a 10-gallon copper alembic pot still. His name is Hephaestus, by the way.
What is that? Where
Hephaestus.
Is it? Hephaestus. Where is it? With
Greek god of fire and metal.
Yes.
So you ever seen Hercules? He's the guy that makes all the lightning bolts.
Yes.
So yeah, I started doing that years and years ago, and I've always been in love with the West Bottoms anyway.
Me too.
I mean, for me, I've always been inspired by like the Industrial Revolution. That era was very fascinating to me. It's a very optimistic and innovative time to be alive. So for me, like that, there's a lot of that energy just down here. When you walk around, you can kind of feel it and see and understand the history that you're walking through. Even if you're buying a repainted dresser or something like that, you can still feel that energy down here. And that's what I love, and that's why this place popped up on my radar 3 years ago, and snagged it up, and yeah, it's been a wild ride since then. The story that whiskey can bring, right? There's character. It's a dark spirit because it's been sitting in a barrel and aging. It doesn't come out of the still dark like that. It comes out, very clear.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anything distillate, I can show you some too.
So the ingredients, educate the neophyte here.
Yeah, and what I really love, so whiskey in general, yeah, neophyte, great word, great term. The whiskey itself, in general, it comes from grain, right? I love tasting different aspects of the grain in whiskey itself, and I love that you can make a wheat whiskey or a rye or a bourbon that has primarily corn, and kind of play with those different variations and get that flavor out of that. But really where it gets really interesting is when you start aging them in barrels. And that has this whole other aspect of the wood that it came from, the part of the forest it came from, the different staves used, how long they've aged to, how harsh the seasons were. All of that can really affect the flavor of whiskey. And it's really fun to try to find and pinpoint those, and honestly just trying different whiskeys, kind of getting kind of perfecting that platform or that taste palette.
So educate me on Scotch, bourbon, whiskey. What's the difference?
So not all. So what's the acronym? I can't ever mess this up. So not all whiskeys are bourbons, but all bourbons are whiskeys. That's a really good example. It all comes down to whatever is the primary grain profile in that. So bourbon is uniquely American too, in that it has to be at least 51% corn, charred in new oak American barrels, aged for at least 2 years. They want to push that up to 3 or 4, but either way, it's charred barrel, mostly corn. So that is bourbon. Rye whiskey is defined as having primarily just rye grain. Wheat whiskey is the same thing. Scotch is very different, and that kind of comes down to like the malting process itself. Malting is where I'm going to paint a beautifully sad picture here, but so when you've got your grain and it's you've harvested it and you've taken it out, what they do with the grain is they essentially get it damp. They try to like moisten it, and what that does is it starts to germinate. And so basically that little seedling's like, hey, I'm going to grow up into a plant. And it's at that point you malt it, which basically means you bake the shit out of it, and you kill any plants that had to be a plant at that point. But what that grain did at this point, it built up a lot of sugar. And then in that sugar, that is fermentable. That can become alcohol. So malted grains are really a big part of the difference between Scotches and some of the other American whiskeys. And in particular with Scotch, it comes down to peatiness. So that malting process, right, when we bake the grains, that can be done in just a kiln, a gas kiln. But in Scotland, primarily in Ireland to an extent, they used basically the moss. That's the ground that they had, and they burned that. And that burning of that during that malting process gives it such a unique flavor. And that's why Scotch tastes so different than other ways. Peaty, yes, yeah, peat moss, yeah.
When you first decided that you wanted to make your own whiskey, was there notes and tastes and things that you were like, this has got to be in my whiskey? Or was there something that you, I mean, not that your whiskey is like any other whiskey, but was there anything that you drew inspiration from?
I mean, honestly, when I was putting together Kansas City whiskey in particular, like when I make whiskeys, it's kind of a crapshoot. I've definitely made some very bad stuff. I've made some good stuff that I'm really excited to release. But the Kansas City whiskey, I went full well with the intention that I really want to appease the broader crowd. I want people that don't necessarily drink whiskey to give it a shot. Or to try it in a cocktail. And for the whiskey drinkers themselves, I want them to consider it a good day-to-day drinker. I mean, that price point, the proof, and just the profile. It's got a lot of character in it, and it's got a nice burn that doesn't kill you too much. And that rye, the rye in that is pretty heavy.
So as I was looking at this West Bottoms Whiskey Co. bottle that you got with Murdoch on there looking all fire and sexy, it says Kansas City Whiskey. Why does it say Kansas City Whiskey? Like, is that a known thing in the whiskey community?
No, not really yet. And that's something that myself and Rieger, who started that brand years and years, or that style of whiskey years and years ago, are really trying to accomplish here. And what makes the Kansas City Whiskey is that addition of sherry. It's a pre-prohibition style of whiskey. If you look at our branding and stuff like that, like I'm obviously fascinated, with that time period. But the rectification of spirits was allowed back then. The addition of sherry added color and flavor to the whiskey back then. For especially like lighter, younger whiskeys. I'm happy to say that I don't know how they tasted back then. I don't know if they were good or not. I would love to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a very rare find of whiskey, but I don't have the money for it yet.
Would that hold up that long, like taste and flavor
Some
profile?
of them do. It depends on the cork and oxidation. Yeah.
Oh, that makes
if
sense.
If the cork is really, really good, then it might be about the same. But
Okay.
It takes time. But this blend in particular, I am proud of it. I mean, I've been distilling for 10 years. Blending's really new to me, and I'm excited to get into it a little bit more. But this blend in particular, this Kansas City whiskey, is a blend of bourbon and rye and a very dry Oloroso sherry, because I really wanted it to be a whiskey-forward, day-to-day drinker. The rye whiskey I use has a 95% rye content, so it's really spicy. It's a really spicy whiskey.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah, and then the bourbon.
Okay, does it have it has a nice little spiciness on it, but it doesn't have a burn. Like a lot of times you get some cheap whiskey and it's hot. It's got that heat.
Yeah.
This has spice, which is different than a heat or a burn.
Yeah, and that spice. I mean, the spice is intentional too, and the bourbon has a really high rye content as well. And so what the addition of sherry does in that instance, and it's a very, very small amount too, it kind of kills that spice and kind of marries those flavors together. So if you're getting some dark, earthy fruits and stuff like that on the back end, that's really what it is.
Can you kind of explain what exactly blending is? Because I assumed whiskey was made, like you were saying, in a barrel. You take it out and then you bottle it, and that's your whiskey. But you're saying maybe not always. It's not always like that.
Yeah, it's different. Owning a distillery in this entire space is a giant exercise in seeing a bootstrap operation like try to get up and off the feet. I mean, I've got a 10-gallon still as a distillery. I did just buy a 200-gallon version, by the way, moving in next door. So that'll be really, it's a really, really big jump. But to get off the ground, really, as a distillery, is creating a product. And creating a product with aged whiskey requires you to buy aged whiskey. It's called sourcing. Okay. Sourcing is probably the most commonly practiced, least talked about thing in the distilling industry. And it really comes down to, I bought the barrels or bought these whiskey aged already. It just comes down to what you do with it at that point. The whole blending process was interesting because I tried probably like 10 different whiskeys from 3 different years. First night, I mean, honestly, it took me 3 really, really drunk nights and 3 really, really shitty mornings coming up with this blend. But, the first night was trying all of them, taking notes and seeing what I liked or didn't like. Second night was, putting some of those whiskeys together to see, okay, what's palatable? Did something get washed out? Did something stand out? And then the third night was just adding that sherry to it to kind of like say, okay, you know, which ones of these are really going to work and what's going to sell and what's going to really appeal to people.
So word around the campfire is you guys make the best old-fashioned in Kansas City. Can you tell me that kind of story and what's
Yeah.
going on with this? Is this a rumor? You know, let's go.
It's a room. Well, the funny thing is, when we opened in January, we didn't open to much fanfare. It was really small, right? I mean, it was middle of COVID. We didn't really. You're trying to figure out how do we open, how do we distribute, how do we get people down here, kind of thing. And we don't have a ton of space either, so it was just kind of feeling it out. But when we were coming up with the menu, in particular, really love old fashions. I tried a lot around Kansas City, and honestly, some were really good, some were disappointing, and we just kind of went on a whim and just said, let's just call it the best and see what happens.
Self-proclaimed the
Self-proclaimed,
best?
yeah.
Okay,
So
I
now,
like it. I like it.
so now I do have to say we did get nominated in the pitch this year for Best Old Fashioned in Kansas City, as well as Best New Bar and Best Local Distillery, which are just insane like
That's
it just,
huge. What an honor. Nice.
It's insane. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's
Congratulations.
really weird. I don't know if we'll win any.
Getting
but
nominated is an honor.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, for the space, it's really.
Would you
neat.
mind whipping us up one of these old-fashioned? I mean, if you're going to sit here and talk
Yeah.
your shit, let's go. Prove it. Come on
Yeah.
now.
All right. Yeah. Put your money where your mouth is.
Let's
yeah.
go.
Do it. I'm trying to taunt you now. Here we go.
Taunt me, but listen, we're about to do
The best.
the best
Old-fashioned.
old-fashioned in Kansas City, and the owner of it, the guy that made it, Alex, is sitting right here. I'm gonna be honest. If this thing's a 6 or a 5, I will be honest. And if it's a 9, I'm gonna be honest too. Let's go.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Salute. Oh my.
All right,
That's
first
way,
thoughts.
way above a 6. It's got a real sweetness to it. And it smells wonderful. Smooth. I could just, you're supposed to sip on an old fashioned. You're not supposed to just chug them. I want to chug this.
It goes down easy, and for the ladies, I have to tell you this. I was always intimidated by whiskey, and what I love about this is that the way it goes down is gentle. It's almost like it melts down your body, which to me, on a date night, gentlemen, if you want to get your girl in the mood, this is the drink to give her. And what I love is
It goes down easy, and so she will. Oh, no! No! So will she. Damn it, when you fuck up a joke, you just ruin it.
This is where I will tell you, gentlemen, this is definitely a sipping drink, but it can go down real quickly.
I'm about to chug the thing. This is, if I gave it on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 9.1. You're ready. I would travel to have this drink. I'm not traveling far. I'm not saying Denver, come out and get this thing just for this. But, you know, if you're suburbs of Kansas City, maybe even Columbia or KU area, come on down. This drink alone is worth the travel time. I promise you.
As a lady, I have to say, I am gonna say it's a 10 out of 10. This is probably the best drink I have ever freaking tasted. Reaction shot, reaction shot.
You can't give anything a
And if I was in Denver, Laguna Beach, or New York, New York, this is the drink that I would want. Come here, check it out, take the sip, and ladies, I'm telling you, it goes down, wink, wink, easy. Cheers.
So do I.
Oh.